Hello everybody and welcome back to another exciting episode of Boyographic, the show in which I, Matt the Gameboy, will take you through the highs and lows of the Game Boy library, one cart at a time. This week we'll be looking at a game that's often been requested. It's Gator. Video game piracy is an interesting thing, at least from a historical perspective. For almost as long as there have been video games, there have been bootlegs. From copied floppies and counterfeit cassette tapes to more modern methods of using software exploits or hardware modification, the industry has fought against this redistribution of software with all the power it could muster, and rightly so. However, where the Nintendo Game Boy is concerned, piracy is at the heart of most people's love of the system. Yes, I'm talking multicarts. You've all seen them, little grey wonders promising 66 games in one that you either seen on a market stall or were given as a gift by a well-meaning grandparent after a trip to Spain. Of course, these 66 games were often the same 5 or 6 titles with some creative license applied to their naming, but still. If you didn't have one, you knew someone who did. And for me at least, this was how I was exposed to games that never came out in the UK, like Serpent and Battle City. One such game I constantly played on my cousin's Shippo 123-in-1 was called Crocodile. Of course, I now know that this game was called Gator in the West, but at the time I couldn't stop playing the Crocodile game. Eventually I got a multicart of my own containing Shippo, the shortened version of the Japanese game's title, Shippo de Bun, roughly translated, a tail with a tail. The game sees you take control of Charlie, who must defeat the evil dragon Basokilla, who threatens Charlie's home of Mowbray. How could an alligator ever hope to take on a dragon? Well, because Charlie can use his tail to deliver some serious damage. Why he doesn't simply bite them, I don't know. But after clearing the game's 4 areas with Charlie's tail alone, I'm hardly about to question his methods. The game is a puzzle platformer in which you must get around the screen and open a variety of locked chests. These contain a lot of helpful items such as screen clearing bombs, hearts for health, and bonus points. But the final chest you open will always contain a key, needed to open the stage's locked door to progress to the next room. You can also find power-up icons in the chest that, after collecting 7 of them, will allow Charlie to shoot a powerful sonic boom to kill enemies at a distance. It's perhaps the enemies themselves that add to the effect, but for my money, Gator feels akin to a single-screen arcade game like Bubble Bobble. Though, like the Game Boy version of that arcade classic, Gator scrolls not only to keep their sprites in that attractive chunky style, but to add some variety to the level design. Enemies will usually take 2 swipes of the tail to dispatch, but be warned, they don't stay dead for long, and will respawn rather quickly. Just because a bomb has cleared out those pesky projectile spewing pterodactyls doesn't mean they're gone for good. But it's not just these enemies you'll need to contend with, as each stage of the game's 4 areas has a boss for you to overcome. These battles are relatively straightforward if you've brought a lot of hearts, as these encounters start with you picking up a full power token, allowing you to instantly gain the power of projectiles to tackle the bosses with. And while they do have patterns, the boss fights mainly come down to you spamming B to attack them until they die. Like the power pieces, you can collect a total of 7 hearts, but by default you'll start with 5. Losing all of them will naturally see you running headlong into a game over screen. Fortunately, the game features a password system and unlimited continues, meaning if you do die in a particular tricky area, you can try again to your heart's content. However, these passwords aren't by room, but by section of each area. And if you're anything like me, this system will make Area 3 particularly tricky. But rest assured, this is the only roadblock you will need to overcome, as the game is generally pretty easy. And herein lies Gator's biggest fault. The difficulty level isn't very high, and thus the game is pretty much a one and done affair. You can blast through the game's 4 areas in about an hour once you've got Charlie's abilities mastered, and there's very little reason to replay the game. Yes, I'm aware the castle is technically both areas 4 and 5, but thematically as well as mechanically, it's just one act broken in half for password purposes. There are hidden chests in levels and 2 hidden rooms, but these offer very little for the player other than making their run easier, making for little replayability. However, in recent years, Gator has shot up in price. Why, you might ask? Well, because the game, as with most of the rarer and expensive Game Boy titles, is full of charm. The sprites look nice, the music is great, and the controls are pretty tight. Whether you're jumping around on land or floating through water, Charlie handles a lot better than most characters in early titles on everyone's favourite handheld. And adding to this the fact it's not been re-released anywhere since its 1991 release, you can see why it's sought after. While I won't rave about Tailgater, I do think it's a very solid title and one I'd recommend you pick up when you get the chance. It's not going to blow your mind by any stretch of the imagination, but as a Natsume game, it bears a lot of the developer's trademarks in terms of style and its great soundtrack. Gameplay is varied on your first playthrough and, dare I say, even challenging the first time around. However, on your second or third waltz through the game, you'll begin to wish there was more variety in the gameplay, and that perhaps it had a little more bite to it. Either way, if you're one of the lucky ones to pick up this game for cheap, I'm sure you'll agree that what this game lacks in longevity, it certainly makes up for in detail. And that brings us to the end of another Boyographics, ladies and gentlemen, on a terrible pun. I hope you've enjoyed. If you have, please check out some more of our videos, and we will be back next week with the first chromatographic. Until then though, Game Boys and Girls, be sure to game on.